Sit here with me. Today I need to share something that has been close to my heart for a long time. A true story, experienced by someone very close to me. And maybe, just maybe, this story will touch you the way it touched me. We live in interesting times, don't we? Times where everything seems to invite us to immediate pleasure. A new outfit, a better car, a more lively party, a more intense relationship. And there's nothing wrong with feeling pleasure, with enjoying life. God gave us this world to live joyfully. But there's a fine line, a delicate boundary between living joyfully and losing ourselves in the unbridled pursuit of sensations. There's an ancient sacred phrase that says, "Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Think about that for a moment. Where is your treasure? What are you truly investing your heart, your energy, your thoughts in? Because it's there, right there, that you're planting the seeds of your future. I met someone who learned this the hard way. I'll call him Lucas, even though that's not his real name. Lucas is, because he's still here, transformed, reborn. Lucas has been my friend since school, the kind of friend you grow up with, share dreams with, make crazy plans with late at night. I saw him change. From a sweet, dreamy young man to someone lost in a maze of pleasures that, instead of satisfying him, only left him increasingly empty. And today, after everything he's been through, I feel I need to tell this story, not to judge, not to point fingers, but so that perhaps you, or someone you love, can recognize the signs before it's too late. This is a story about falling, about darkness, but above all, it's a story about light, about new beginnings, about God's infinite mercy that never, ever abandons his children. Lucas was always a special boy. I remember him at 15, sitting under a tree in the schoolyard reading poetry. He dreamed of making a difference in the world, wanting to help people. He had that sparkle in his eyes, you know? That sparkle of someone who still believes anything is possible. Life, however, has its tortuous paths. In his early 20s, Lucas landed a great job, a large company, a generous salary, and benefits most only dream of, and the money started rolling in. At first, he was happy to be able to help his parents, to no longer struggle. But money is like the sea. The more you drink, the thirstier you get if you don't know how much. He bought an imported car. Then, an apartment in an upscale neighborhood. His clothes became more expensive, his watches more flashy. And along with these things came people. People who appeared when there was champagne on the table and disappeared when the bottle was empty. I remember one day, it must have been about 7 years ago, when I went to visit him in his new apartment. What an impressive place. Views of the entire city, designer furniture, a wine cellar that looked like something out of a magazine. But when I looked at Lucas, something bothered me. He was different. The smile was still there, but it seemed staged, as if it were a mask he was putting on for the world. "I'm living the dream, brother," he told me, opening his arms. "Everything I ever wanted is here." But I knew Lucas, and that wasn't all he ever wanted. He wanted peace. He wanted to make a difference. He wanted true love. The parties started to become more frequent. Every week there was something. A happy hour that went into the wee hours, a VIP event, a weekend at some luxurious resort. And Lucas was always there, always surrounded by people, always with a glass in his hand, always laughing too loudly. That's when he discovered the online casino. "It's just for fun," he'd say. "Yee. It relaxes your mind after work." But I'd see his messages in the wee hours. "I just won $5,000. And then, silence for days. Because what he didn't tell us were the losses, the nights he'd gamble and lose everything he'd won. And then some. Relationships became a revolving door. A different person every month, sometimes every week. Empty encounters, where the body was present but the soul remained absent. He was trying to fill a hole in his soul with things that only made it deeper. It was like trying to quench your thirst by drinking seawater. The more you drank, the thirstier you felt. The family began to worry. His mother, Donna Maria, a simple woman of deep faith, called me crying. "He doesn't come to visit me anymore. When he does, he's always in a hurry, always distracted by his cell phone. My son is lost, and I don't know how to get him back." I tried to talk to him a few times. "Lucas, brother, are you okay?" Really? He laughed and patted me on the shoulder. Better than ever. You need to relax more. Enjoy life. But his eyes told another story. They were tired, empty. He laughed with his lips, but his eyes wept silently. Work began to suffer. Lucas, who was dedicated and punctual, began arriving late and missing important meetings. Hangovers were constant. His concentration was non-existent. He was living for the next pleasure, the next intense feeling. And then came cocaine. I don't know exactly when it started. At these parties of beautiful people and easy money, these things come naturally. Everyone uses them. It's normal, they said. It makes you more alert, more confident. Lies dressed as truth. At first, it was only on weekends. Then it started on Thursdays too, and Wednesdays. And before I knew it, he was using it all week long, trying to keep up with the hectic pace of a life that wasn't sustainable. The money coming in, however much it was, began to run out. Debts began to mount. Loans to cover lost bets. Credit cards maxed out. Loan sharks knocking on the door. His true friends, those who truly knew him, drifted away. Not because they didn't love him, but because he had surrounded himself with walls so high we could no longer reach him. Every piece of advice was met with irritation. Every concern, with mockery. "You're jealous," he said. "You can't see me happy." But happiness was exactly what was missing in that whole life. The coldness grew. Lucas, who cried watching movies, who was moved by the pain of others, became indifferent. His heart was so attached to material things, to fleeting pleasures, that there was no longer room for genuine love. God was distant. Or rather, Lucas was the one who had distanced himself. The peak of his downfall came one December night. He had bet everything, and I mean everything, on a poker game at an underground casino. He was sure he would win. He lost everything. His apartment was already mortgaged. His car had been sold to pay off previous debts. The company had fired him 3 months earlier, and he hadn't told anyone, keeping up the facade with what was left. That night, Lucas returned to the apartment he was about to lose, lay down on the cold floor of the empty living room, even the furniture had been taken, and cried. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child, a cry of the soul, of deep despair, of someone who had finally seen the abyss into which he had fallen. He had lost everything. His health was compromised, his dignity was shattered, his true friendships were distant, his family was hurt and worried, and worst of all, he had lost himself. That sweet young man who read poetry under the tree was no more, or at least that's what Lucas thought on that dark night of his soul. Pain has a curious way of teaching us. When everything is fine, or seemingly fine, we don't stop to think. But when we hit rock bottom, when there's nowhere left to fall, we either wake up or die. Lucas told me, much later, that that night on the cold floor of the empty apartment, he felt like giving up on everything. He felt like simply not being here anymore. The pain was too great, the shame too heavy. But then, in the midst of that early morning silence, a memory came to him, a memory so simple, so unassuming, it might seem insignificant, but it was the one that saved him. He remembered his mother, Donna Maria, kneeling beside his bed when he was a child, teaching him to pray. God never abandons his children, Lucas. Never. It may seem like he's far away, but he's always here, with open arms waiting for us to return. And Lucas cried even more. But this time, it was a different kind of cry. It was the cry of someone who recognizes their mistake, of someone who feels their own insignificance, of someone who, for the first time in years, had no pride, no masks, nothing but the naked truth of a shattered life. "God," he whispered into the darkness, "I messed up. I did everything wrong. I've walked away from you, from my family, from myself. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, but I need help. I can't take it anymore." There was no thunder. There were no heavenly lights, but there was something more powerful. There was peace. A small, timid, but real peace, like a ray of light entering through a crack in the darkness. The next day, for the first time in months, Lucas woke up with a purpose. He didn't know how, but he knew he needed to change. He needed to rebuild, and the first step would be the hardest, asking for help. He called his mother. Donna Maria answered on the first ring, as if she'd been expecting the call for months. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. I messed up. I messed up so badly. I need you. And do you know what she replied? My son, I've always been here. Always. When it was all over, all that was left was the mirror. And God, and that, Lucas discovered, was more than enough to start over. He returned to his mother's house, the same childhood bedroom, with faded posters and a single bed. What a difference from the luxury apartment. But there, in that simplicity, was something the apartment never had: true love. The first few days were terrible. His body was taking the toll of his excesses. Cocaine withdrawal was hell. The pain, the tremors, the nightmares. Donna Maria cared for him as she had when he was a baby, with infinite patience and constant prayers. Lucas began accompanying her to church meetings, at first just to please her. But little by little, those words of faith, hope, and a new beginning began to resonate. They began to heal wounds he hadn't even known he had. It was at one of these meetings that he met a group of volunteers working at a recovery home for drug addicts. Do you want to help? They asked. And for the first time in years, Lucas felt that old desire, that yearning to make a difference. He started by bringing donations, then participating in conversation circles, and there, listening to stories from people who had been through the same thing as him or worse, Lucas understood something fundamental. He was not alone. The pain was shared, and the healing could be too. There was a particular day, 3 months after returning home, that marked a turning point. Lucas was in a small square near his mother's house, sitting on a bench, watching the children play. A little girl, about 5 years old, tripped and fell. He began to cry, and his father ran, picked her up, wiped her tears, and kissed her scraped knee. It's okay, my daughter. It's over. Daddy's here. Lucas saw this and understood. God was that father. He had stumbled, fallen, and gotten badly hurt. But God was there, with open arms, ready to wipe away his tears, heal his wounds. The Father does not reject a son who returns repentant. He never has. He cried there, on that park bench, but they were tears of gratitude, of relief, of rebirth. It was around this time that he reached out to me. I hadn't seen him in almost a year. When I answered the phone and heard his voice, my heart sank. Brother, he said, I know I don't deserve this, but would you have some time to talk to me? We met in a simple cafe, quite different from the fancy places he'd frequented before. And when I saw him, I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, dressed simply, without the expensive accessories. But his eyes, oh, his eyes were different. They had that sparkle again, the sparkle I'd seen under the tree so many years ago. We talked for hours. He told me everything. He didn't hide anything. He didn't minimize his mistakes. And he apologized, a sincere apology. I lost myself, he said. I completely lost myself, but I'm coming back. Slowly, one day at a time. But I'm coming back. And I saw that he was coming back. Not to what he was, but to something better, to something truer. Rebuilding is always slower than destruction. It took Lucas years to fall into that abyss, and it would take time to climb out completely. But the difference is that now he wasn't alone. He had God, he had family, he had true friends, and above all, he had a purpose. He got a simple job at a small company. He earned a fraction of what he had earned before, but he worked with dignity and honesty. And at night, after work, he continued his volunteer work at the recovery home. Do you know the difference? He once told me. Before, I worked to have, now I work to be useful, to be true, to be an instrument of God. Lucas learned what balance means. He didn't become a monk isolated from the world. He didn't condemn all of life's pleasures, but he learned moderation. He learned that true joy comes not from excess, but from harmony. He went out with friends again, but for real conversations, genuine laughter, and moments of true connection. He met a girl at church, a simple woman of deep faith. They began meeting for coffee and walks in the park. A relationship built slowly, with respect, with true love. It wasn't the intense, fleeting fire of previous relationships. It was the ember that warms, that lasts, that doesn't burn out. He learned to take pleasure in simple things, a sunset, a conversation with his mother, a book of poetry he'd reread. a song that touched his soul, and he discovered that these pleasures, because they were more subtle, were infinitely deeper. Where there was once turmoil, there was now peace. Where there was anxiety, there was serenity. Where there was emptiness, there was fullness. Lucas developed a new philosophy of life. Today, I seek to feel pleasure. Yes, but in what is eternal, in peace of mind, in love for others, in simplicity. I discovered that the true treasure is not in what I possess, but in who I am. And he became a beacon for others. At the recovery center, his story inspired. People saw him as living proof that change is possible, that no matter how low you've fallen, there's always a way back. One day, a young man arrived at the recovery house, completely destroyed by drugs, debt, and hopelessness. He looked at Lucas and said, "I'm hopeless. I've ruined everything." Lucas sat down beside him, put his hand on his shoulder and said, "I thought the same thing. I was right where you are, but I discovered that as long as there is life, there is hope. As long as God exists, there is new beginning. You are not alone." And the boy cried. He cried with relief, with hope. Lucas learned that balance isn't the absence of joy, but conscious fulfillment. It's not denying pleasures, but choosing those that elevate rather than destroy. It's understanding that we can enjoy life without losing ourselves in it. He returned to the tree where he used to read poetry during his school days. He took a book and spent the afternoon there, in silence, in peace. And in that moment, he realized he had returned home, not to his physical home, but to his soul. Now he plants flowers where before there were only ashes, and these flowers grow, strong and beautiful, watered by faith, hope, and love. Today, when I look at Lucas, I see a living miracle, not because he became rich again. He didn't. Not because his life is perfect. It isn't. But because he found something no amount of money can buy. Inner peace, true purpose, connection with God. He continues working, building his life with humility. He married that girl from church, and together they live a simple but meaningful life. He still helps out at the recovery center. Now as a coordinator, he's helped dozens of people find their way back. Sometimes we meet for coffee, and when I look into his eyes, I see that sparkle. The same sparkle I had when I was 15 and reading poetry under the tree. But now, that sparkle is even stronger, tempered by suffering, by the fall, by rebuilding. And you know what he told me not long ago. I wouldn't change anything I went through. The pain was terrible, but necessary. It taught me who I really am. It taught me where the true treasure lies. So I ask you, my friend, where is your treasure? Observe. Observe honestly where you seek pleasure, how you enjoy yourself, in what you invest your heart, your time, your energy, because that's where your heart is, right there. And if it's attached to things that pass, to matter that wears away, to pleasure that lasts only a moment, be careful. Pain will come. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will come. To have pleasure as one's goal is to surrender one's soul to the seat of emptiness. It is to dig a bottomless pit where there will never be true satisfaction. But here's the good news. There is a middle ground. You can have joy. You can have pleasure. You can enjoy this beautiful life God has given us, but all with balance, all with awareness, all knowing that the true treasure lies in eternal things, in love, in faith, in kindness, in compassion. Nothing is forbidden, but everything needs to have a greater meaning. Excess hurts. Attachment blinds. Unbridled pursuit destroys. But balance saves. If you're lost today, if you feel like you've strayed from the path, if the pleasure you seek only leaves you feeling emptier, know this: it's not too late. It's never too late. God always leaves a light on the path back. Lucas found this light. I saw it happen. And if it happened to him, it can happen to you. Come home. Come back to the essentials. Come back to love. Come back to God. And when you return, you'll discover that He never left. He was always there, with open arms, waiting for you to arrive. May God bless your journey. May you find balance. And may your heart be where the true treasure lies, in eternity, in love, in the peace that only God can give, a fraternal hug. And remember, you are not alone. You never were. And before we wrap up this conversation, I want to share something special with you. If this story touched your heart, if you identified with any part of this journey, or if you know someone going through a difficult time, I've prepared more comprehensive material for you. I've created an ebook where I delve deeper into these teachings on spiritual balance, on how to find the middle ground between healthy pleasure and the excesses that distance us from God. In it, you'll find daily reflections to strengthen your spiritual connection, simple practices to cultivate balance in everyday life, inspiring stories of overcoming and transformation, guidance on how to identify when you are straying from the path, practical exercises of self-knowledge and spirituality. This ebook is a gift that I prepared with great care and dedication, thinking of you who seek a fuller, more conscious life, closer to God. The download link is in the description of this video. It's free, made with brotherly love, and I hope it's a useful tool on your journey. Because Lucas's story doesn't end here, and neither does yours. Each day is a new opportunity to start over, to choose balance, to seek what truly matters. Download the ebook, share it with those you love, and together we will build more balanced, happier lives, closer to the divine. A big hug, and may God always light your path.